And welcome to the Cookie Pocket Holiday Specials 2021. It's episode 58, and today I am hosting. I being a man who's greatly out of practice in this regard. I, Zach, am joined by Mitchell and Christian as always, and today we're talking about my personal choice for our holiday specials, Scrooge from 1951. This is a British adaptation of A Christmas Carol, starring Alastair Sim as the titular character Ebenezer Scrooge, and everybody pretty much knows this story at this point. He's sort of a miserly old man who learns the error of his ways on one Christmas Eve when he's visited by three ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come. Let's not beat around the bush, or beat about the bush, whichever you prefer to do. What
In the
did
bush,
we
out the bush?
think of the film overall?
Well, Zach, I would like to think that I appreciated this. And for a while, I was not really buying into the hype of Alastair Sim, our leading man. But I grew to appreciate it quite a bit, because I think by the end we really see the journey that he's been on as a character and as a performer. And it made me think more abstractly about lead performances in general. Maybe how I'm used to them being, even if the character experiences some changes or fundamental moments in their life, a lot of times the performance can feel kind of samey from start to finish, and that is totally not true for Alastair Sim. And he's like a totally different man in the last 10 minutes or so, as he should be. Which I just really appreciated. I was ready to kind of like be like, he's fine, but is he really like the Scrooge? He is the Scrooge. I am prepared to say that. Okay.
Nice.
And he's got these big eyes and a very chiseled, not chiseled, but like he's got like these features that just.
He's got the wrinkles.
He's got a craggy face, yeah.
Yes, craggy. Yeah. Craggy's the better word. And I was also going to be kind of like, I don't know, I feel like Scrooge should be older, maybe older than 50, but then I decided, well, he's old enough, and maybe it's nice for Scrooge to be like older, middle-aged, because then there really is like time for him to be a better man. Maybe Scrooge shouldn't be on his deathbed.
Yeah.
But anyway, those are kind of pedantic points. I came around to him quite a bit, is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. Despite that, I still was... I've seen this story quite a few times at this point. I'm really well acquainted with the tale, and I guess I was I had some trouble maintaining attention. I guess I just got a little bored because I have the worst attention span of the three of us probably, and all this and that and the other. But it's a good film. Certainly a good lead performance. If you are more accustomed to contemporary portrayals of the story, you may find yourself a wee bit unengaged. But I gave this a 3 out of 5. I think it basically does everything that it needs to do. I liked it, and it tells the story the way I think it needs to be told.
Okay, Mitchell.
There's no after credit scene, and it's not connecting it to other films. Mm-hmm. It didn't say Scrooge will return at the end.
Yes, Wong.
And I'm very disappointed. And it wasn't in color, but at least there was sound. Haha. Actually, I'm gonna lead that into one of my primary points. That the fact that it's black and white enhances the viewing experience tremendously. Mm-hmm. And I feel like some of the best shots would not be nearly as good if it wasn't so black and white. And I really appreciated that. But yeah, Alastair Sim is freaking Scrooge. Everybody shut up. Even though you all agree. And I heavily enjoy his performance because I feel like it kind of translates. It feels like it's translating anyway from literature. Because I feel like his expressions are as if he's reading the book and then like, all right, I have to like really express myself because that's how the book like, intensely described the way that he looks, and he has to like really be emphatic about it. And I don't mean like in your face emphatic, but I feel like he's just whenever he's emotive, he's definitely like portraying every aspect of what he's thinking about. And I just feel like that's that's another reason why I think he's such a great Scrooge. And that goes for like his highest highs and his lowest lows. So like when he's really pissed, he's really mad, and if he's like really happy, he's going insane. And even my boy Patrick Stewart, because that's still my personal favorite adaptation, he's just Patrick Stewart still just has like a constant gravitas. He kind of feels like Patrick Stewart trying to be Scrooge. Alastair Sim is just Scrooge, and there's really no other way to put it. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the other casting and everything, I feel like just every single scene that's supposed to be like, the most memorable scenes from the story or most memorable moments from the story I feel like are really pretty memorable here. The only parts that are really not as memorable are the parts that aren't as memorable in the actual story. So kind of the side stuff isn't really as engaging, I guess, like for the average viewer. But I do like that it's there. I feel like the additional backstory, especially for the past, I feel like this is like the best portrayal in movie form for Scrooge's past, because I feel like it really sets up a neat foundation for him to become the way that he is, and having additional scenes with Fezziwig and everything. But yeah, otherwise, I can definitely see where Christian's coming from. It definitely feels more standard. It doesn't feel like there's a lot, like, at least right off the bat, that's like super different. But I do feel like the lines that were supposed to be delivered were delivered especially well, and I wouldn't really change very much when it comes to like the most memorable moments. And Tiny Tim's great, and Bob and Fred and all of them. I think they're all casted fine. So
yeah, I think I kind of agree with both of you in certain regards. I mean, I think you both mentioned this maybe in your descriptions, but I'd mentioned beforehand that this is my favorite version of A Christmas Carol, and I think a large part of that does come down to Alastair Sim as Scrooge. He really, I think, encapsulates the character on both sides of the spectrum. A lot of actors who play Scrooge get really into, like, the miserly, grim aspect of the character, and then their sort of reformed Scrooge doesn't really work. Or you buy them as reformed Scrooge, but their miserly Scrooge is sort of like, I don't really buy it. I totally buy Alastair Sim as both versions of Scrooge, and I think when he is sort of redeemed, he's not only pleasant and giddy, but I also think he's really funny. There's just little things he says and his mannerisms, and even little lines that aren't in the original book that I find really, really amusing. Just little things like when he throws the pen over his shoulder and he says, "Oh, I don't deserve to be so happy, but I can't help it." I love that line, which is why I put it in the trailer for these holiday specials. And then the way that he's going around his room going, I need a label, as he's looking for the label. I do that all the time when I'm looking for a ladle in my kitchen.
Projection.
Yes, and I didn't know for years where I got it from, but I got it from this performance. I think he's great. And then additionally, a lot of Scrooges, I think, you buy them as being kind of an unpleasant person, but I don't think they get what Alastair Sim captures here in that I think he's, like, genuinely kind of scary and imposing at the beginning. Like, he's a frightening man, which from a lot of Scrooges, I don't really get that. I mean, maybe, like other Scrooges are mean old men and kind of darken the days of the people around them, but I can see being, like, genuinely startled by this Scrooge. But, I mean, outside of that, I do also like the atmosphere of this entire production. It's kind of a grimmer Christmas Carol than a lot of other American versions. Lots of kind of dark shadows, very sort of bleak, empty London streets, which might be a reflection of a lower budget. It was a British film, and the British film industry was not the highest budgeted thing at the time. But I do think it works. It's kind of a lonely, stark film, and I enjoy that a lot. So for me, it's a 4 out of 5. My absolute favorite adaptation of the story. Now, we've all mentioned Scrooge at this point, but I do want to talk about another kind of vital aspect of A Christmas Carol, and that's the ghosts. What do you think of our 3, or I guess our 4 ghosts in this version, because we have Marley as well, past, present, yet to come, and Marley. Do you think this film executes them well? Because a lot of films, a lot of early adaptations of A Christmas Carol especially, kind of fall flat when it comes to those 3 or 4 spirits.
I think Marley is definitely one of the best ones. Okay. I mean, I think he's really striking. I feel like it really breaks down the big wall that Alastair Sim's performance is kind of set up, kind of that reserved old man kind of description that you were making, Zach, and kind of having like he's almost scarier when he's not doing something. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that being broken down by that very emphatic performance, I think was good. I feel like the past one was pretty much forgettable. I feel like the actual events of the past were a lot more important. Present was definitely up there. He was pretty good. He delivered his lines fine. He wasn't like a super standout. I mean, and it's kind of the same thing with the future. I feel like the events going around and the supporting characters were a lot more important in this iteration than most, I would say. But I also feel like that helps a lot more from an adaptation standpoint too, because I definitely feel like the supporting characters, saying the lines that are the most memorable, like I'd said before, that's like the most important part, and I feel like that's more important to the delivery of the story and its messages than having these really distinct ghosts with different personalities and all the effects and stuff. So, I guess it comes down to a matter of preference.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. In most iterations, Marley is my favorite ghost, just as a character. And I think that there's like this honestly terrifying like wall of sound right before Marley appears that really got me. Yeah. That's probably like the moment that stuck out to me most in this. I think that, Zach, you mentioned this in not your most recent review, but your review from 2 years ago, I think, on Letterboxd. I think the Ghost of Christmas Past gets maybe a little too much time. I think they could have stood to cut some of that. Yeah. But I think the ghosts themselves and the way that they're presented are all fairly effective and do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is kind of an interesting contrast because I'm somebody who really likes Marley as a character as well, and also just as a design. I really like that idea of, this man that was previously Scrooge's best friend, sort of girded in chains. I think that's a really kind of horrifying image. But I think that even though the dialogue is 100% accurate to the book here, the performance, I think, is really a bit hammy. I mean, I can't remember who plays him here, but he really leans into the, oh, woe is me's, and it feels really over the top, I think. And whereas, I mean, Mitchell, you seem to kind of think that Yet to Come is kind of just another cog in the story, which I sort of can agree with, but I do like how that character is designed in this version. I like that a lot of the time Yet to Come is kind of a totally impassable figure. There's nothing behind that hood, and I like that here there's sort of the suggestion of a face. You can kind of see like a pale figure through a veil, and I think that is kind of spooky and interesting. I mean, it's a very slight change to a lot of the other spirits, but I think it's interesting nonetheless to not have just a sort of Grim Reaper cloaked shadow, and kind of more expand upon that character a little bit. I think really the ghosts here, I think, are some of the weakest aspects of the film, to be honest. I definitely agree. Christmas Past is just sort of, that's a Christmas Past. I think a lot of the time Christmas Past is sort of the least interesting ghost in an adaptation of Scrooge, because everybody either goes for a candle or they go for someone who happens to be wearing holly, and then they call it a day, which is kind of the approach they go with here, just sort of holly, white-dressed person, and then we're fine.
There's a sense of building up each subsequent ghost, too, I think, which is
I do think that's fair. I like the way that the ignorance and want scene is handled with Christmas Present.
Absolutely.
That's a moment that some adaptations just nix, but I think this one deals with it really startlingly. And they also, I think, maintain the character of Christmas Present throughout, because some versions choose to make him almost like villainous and angry in that scene, and he stays sort of very neutral and placid, and his words kind of growing are sort of what becomes spooky and aggressive in the moment. Very nice use of sound throughout, I think. Very nice use of echoing and reverb and repetition in the soundtrack. But overall, I do think the spirits are effective, but later adaptations, I think, make better use of some of the ghosts than this current one.
The actor that plays Marley was in Where Eagles Dare.
Was he really?
He was Administrator Roland.
Huh.
He's Roland, yeah, okay. He looks old as dirt. But
In that
I don't know
version?
why.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I guess because he's faded and stuff.
Hey, dear viewer, if you're wondering, what are eagles?
And why are they
and where
daring?
do they dare? Take a look at our last season and watch that movie and listen
See
to us
why
talk.
I'm right.
Yeah, Mitchell
Yeah.
hosted it.
Maybe
We got
watch
to dunk on Zach a lot.
maybe watch Marley fall off of a gondola lift. I don't know where his character shows up. I can't
hype.
remember.
You suck,
But all right,
man.
so we've talked about characters, but kind of as an adaptation as a whole, how do you think this film holds up as an adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and how do you think it compares to other versions that you have seen? Can you guys maybe enlighten us on other versions that you've seen, so our viewers have a little bit of an idea of kind of what context we're going in here with?
I don't watch these every month, Zach. I don't know what the frick. The Muppets, Mickey Mouse, Jim Carrey, PTSD. This one, okay. This one, I feel like is the best. I think this is the best adaptation.
Oh.
Objectively, I feel like this is the best one because of Alastair Sim's performance and just of it doesn't feel like it needs to add anything to make it better. It doesn't feel like it needs to really accentuate on anything besides the subject matter. And I feel like that's really important. Just really going for what the novel was trying to go for as best as possible, and kind of, I'm not just saying like from like an originalist perspective, like you have to do what the book does, but I feel like in this case, just making sure all the scenes that are in the book come out in film form with the best acting potential. I feel like that's gonna, that's all you really need. And I feel like the biggest things that later adaptations struggle with, including the Patrick Stewart one, is that they keep trying to add stuff that doesn't really, it doesn't really add or subtract from the main message. Like, you still get the same message at the end of the day, and I feel like the technological limitations are almost the greatest benefit in that regard. But I feel like I've seen the 30s version, and I've heard about like the ending is a different. I don't know if you could elaborate on that, Zach, but I know the ending is like different or something.
Yeah.
In the 30s one. And I don't really remember it very much, but between this one, the George C. Scott one, I just don't feel like. I mean, honestly, it's between Alastair Sim and George C. Scott for those, because that's and I feel like that's pretty much self-explanatory there. But
well, it's interesting you should mention that those two are kind of interrelated, because the editor of this version, Clive Donner, actually went on to direct the George C. Scott version. So there's some connective tissue between the two of those, even though that one was made like 30 years later.
Well, there you go. It's all connected.
There you go, indeed.
The multiverse is real.
They're coming through. I can't stop them. I see
Alastair
the silhouette of Tiny Tim.
Reginald
in
Nolan.
in this universe, it's his other leg.
Scrooge, No Way Home.
Oh dear. I'll reflect.
All right, Christian. Why is the Muppets better?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm not going to. It's not better. I'm not going to say that it's better. I like it more, and I think that. But I do think that A Christmas Carol is a story that works best when it's presented in a medium like familiar to the audience. So like,
Sure.
I'm not going to recommend Alastair Sim to like a 10-year-old kid. That's just. Sorry, Zach.
I'll raise
I'm
that
very
kid
sorry.
right.
No.
Hand over the kid to me. I'll take care of him.
Okay, steady on now. We're not handing over kids to anybody. I will say, though, I do agree with that, because when I was around, well, I wasn't 10, but I was around 5 or 6, and this is my dad's favorite version of the story as well, because he grew up watching it on TV with his dad, and he showed it to the family, and I was bored out of my skull. And then when I was around like 12, I was going through our VHSs because I had nothing to watch, and I was like, oh, I'll put this on. I sort of rediscovered it and fell in love with it as an adaptation later. But I definitely agree that if you're going to start a kid off with The Christmas Carol, you give them the Muppets, you give them Mickey Mouse, you give them a version they can kind of digest better. That being said, I do really like this version oddly enough, for what it adds to the story. Because like Mitchell was saying, there are a lot of later adaptations of A Christmas Carol that try to add things and it just doesn't work. I think in the case of a version like the 2009 motion capture one that Jim Carrey was in, they try to add a lot in that version, but it doesn't feel tonally right with the story. It doesn't feel like it meshes, and so it doesn't really work. Everything in this version feels like Dickens. There are so many little lines of dialogue that feel like they came right out of the book, where every time I watch it, I go, wait, that wasn't in the book? To the degree that like later adaptations have even taken directly from this version, the relationship between Scrooge and his housekeeper. This is like the first version that really kind of fleshes that out and uses that for comedic effect, which later adaptations then took from. The housekeeper being called Miss Dilber is from this version and used in later versions. The interaction between Scrooge and the man who owes him money outside the exchange, that's sort of used as an interaction later in A Muppet Christmas Carol when he meets Mr. Applegate, who comes to his offices and tries to ask for more time on his loan. And kind of the place where it most works for me is in the Christmas Past segment. I do agree with myself from 2 years ago and with Christian that the segment itself is maybe a little too long, but I like some of the things that are added. I specifically like the addition of like regrets that Scrooge has, things that he can't change. A lot of what they show in the Christmas Past segment in the book and in other films is sort of exposition as to how Scrooge became how he was. But this version shows things that maybe he didn't realize about himself, that he regrets after seeing them. Kind of the highlight being that his sister, when she died in childbirth, like her final wish was for Scrooge to look after her son. And he never heard that when he was a young man. So when he recognizes that in the past, that's a moment of, my God, what have I done? I've spent my entire life directly flouting the final wish of my sister, who is like the only person I ever loved. Later things as well, you see more of sort of Scrooge and Marley's relationship in the past and how they came to take over the business and how ruthless they were towards other people involved in the business and towards Mr. Fezziwig, who was also kind of one of Scrooge's only friends. Things like that aren't in the book, but they feel like they were, and they feel like really natural additions to the story. So I really appreciate this film for that. But Mitchell, you mentioned the 1930s version. So the one I think you're probably referring to, there's a 1938 American version by MGM starring Reginald Owen. Dearest listener, I own all of these on DVD and I watch them every year. I'm a big Christmas Carol fan. But there's actually kind of an interesting relationship between this version and the 38 one. This film was originally going to premiere at Radio City Music Hall in 1951 in the United States, but it was decided that it was too dark and too grim, and so it was moved to the next year around November, and the 38 version was shown instead. So kind of bouncing off of that, I wanted to ask you guys, do you think that this version is too dark and too grim for A Christmas Carol? Or in comparison to other versions? What are your thoughts on the tone?
I think the overall message, you can pretty much, you can derive a lot of terrible things from that. I think if you kind of understand who Scrooge is and what are all of his issues, I don't really feel like you're compromising anybody's, I don't know, you're compromising a kid's brain and development from showing them that kind of stuff. No, I think the story is already dark to begin with. Yeah. I don't really know how much. I can understand you can portray it with a darker tone and kind of add little things here and there. They're going to make it more frightening maybe, but at the same time, I feel like the overall message is already grim and dark on its own. I don't really think there's a lot much else you can do that would change it. So
that's fair.
Yeah. I wholly agree. I was just going to say, I think it is grim and dark. I think it has to be to some extent. And yeah, I mean, I think if we really think critically about a lot of other holiday family things, the crux of It's a Wonderful Life is suicide. I mean, these are deeply sad and dark things, at least at the outset. So I don't think you can really mask those much, if at all.
Yeah, and I would even say that the 38 version, which is sort of more beloved at the time at least, makes a lot of compromises to the original story in order to make it happier. And in my opinion, at least, kind of going darker at the beginning and having that grimmer feel means that the ending is just all the more joyful and Christmassy and happy and kind of fitting with the holiday, at least in my opinion. But yeah, that's kind of all I had for my questions. Any final thoughts on Scrooge from 1951 before we move on to our other segments?
I feel like if you like the actual story at all and you like the original ratings of our boy Dickens, then you may very much appreciate this version. I feel like pretty much I feel like everyone should at least try it, because I mean, obviously considering the time period, but at the same time, I don't know. I think I could definitely see families watching this every year if they know what the actual story is about, and I feel like that's important. Like knowing what the actual literary messages were. That's gonna be like how you're gonna be able to enjoy this.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I think everyone should. I think I said something similar when we recorded our episode last year for the Patrick Stewart version. I think everyone owes it to themselves to read. Ideally read and watch, or in some way, shape, or form, take in the story of A Christmas Carol, even if it's like, I don't even care if it's the Jim Carrey version. Honestly, just watch one of them.
I do.
I don't dislike that version. So
yeah, I mean, yeah. I think it's a really. I mean, there's a reason it's been retold so many times, so many ways. But specifically about this one, yeah, I think if you like the story, give it a go. It definitely requires the patience of an audience member, I think. So, keep that in mind. But sure, go watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. Like I said, it's my favorite. I think if you're somebody who can take an older film and somebody who can watch a black and white film without feeling sort of drained, then I think you'll absolutely have a blast with this around the holidays. I would say, it's a great... I found that it's a great, like, Christmas Eve or Christmas morning movie. This is a really good one, I think, to put on, like, after unwrapping presents, if you do that kind of thing on Christmas, where maybe mom's making breakfast and the kids are kind of running around with their new toys and dad's just asleep in the chair. Like, this is a good movie.
Is that the life that you want, Zach?
This is a good movie to put on around that time and just sort of feel like, that's kind of traditional Christmas right there. But yeah, it's a movie I get a lot out of around the holidays, and I think, it's a classic piece of holiday film that a lot of other people get something out of as well. So 4 out of 5. I think it's great, and I really recommend it. And without further ado, let's move on to the Week in Review. This is a segment we added last season where we talk about things that we've seen, watched, read, listened to, whatever, since we recorded our last episode. So guys, what have you been seeing, reading, watching, listening to, or whatever?
Well, I have been watching, not this week, I must admit, but
Yes.
it's been some time since we recorded regularly, so I'm jumping a little further back. I watched recently The Beatles Get Back, directed by Peter Jackson. Yes, finally, all 471 minutes of it are streaming on your pal Ricky Rat's service, Disney Plus. And let me tell you, it is really quite fascinating. So much of it is just, it really is just a camera in the room of the Beatles doing their thing, and there are so many miraculous moments. One that's been highlighted a lot on social media is you see the moment that Paul sort of comes up with Get Back on his bass, and he's just like fiddling around for a couple minutes, and he has the song like out of nowhere, and it really is kind of like witnessing a miracle. There are other really insightful things where you see how a song comes together, and you see the difference it makes when they pull in Billy Preston, this excellent musician, keyboardist, who sort of adds his own sound, but also like actually pushes them to be professional instead of just goofing off the whole time. And it's really just a marvelous thing if you're a Beatles fan, and also if you're not. I think it's worth almost everyone's time. It's certainly being raved about critically, and I think it's well deserving. So it's a lot of time for sure, but I think it's worth your time. And give it a go if you've got Disney Plus.
Yeah, I'm gonna second that. I also absolutely loved Get Back. I've been looking forward to it for a while. and I went so far as to kind of steal somebody else's Disney Plus account to watch it.
Zach won't give Ricky Rat any of his money, guys.
No,
They
Ricky,
deserve it.
get back. But yeah, I think there are so many like Rick Dalton point moments in this where you're just absolutely astonished by what you're seeing. There's a moment where Mal Evans and I think Ringo or maybe John are talking about like, I don't know, something they're gonna do for the venue, like, oh, what are we gonna make the stage out of? And like in the background you can hear Paul like just farting around on the piano and coming up with Let It Be.
Yeah.
And you want to be like, everybody shut up, he's coming up with Let It Be. But like at the time, like that's just a song, like it's just he's doing something on the camera, he's doodling around over there. There's a moment where they're just kind of messing around with the mics, and John randomly sings "Imagine That I Love You," and you're like, that's Imagine. Like, it was a seriously shocking moment. But yeah, I mean, as a Beatles fan, I got a ton out of it. But I watched this with my dad, and then also my mom and my sister drifted in and out over the 3 days that we watched this, and even they kind of got something out of it as well. And my sister doesn't really like the Beatles at all. But she was watching episode 2 because there was nothing else to do, and she was like, "Oh, it's so George is coming back now. Okay, this should be interesting." And she was kind of getting into it. My mom found bits of it very amusing. Everybody in my family decided they really didn't like Yoko all that much. So, it's a piece of media that arouses an opinion in its audience, whether they be sort of knowledgeable in the context of it or not. And that last hour with the rooftop concert is just amazing. Some of the best stuff I've seen all this year. It doesn't matter that they play Get Back like 4 times. Like it's still just, it's better every single time they play it. So yeah, Get Back. 5 out of 5 for me. I absolutely recommend it. You got to see it.
5 out of 5 for
me.
I
only have time for Band of Brothers again, so that's what I've been doing.
What's that, the 12th time?
Sons of... No, probably more than that. Sons of Anarchy. Anyway. So I was going to say, They Shall Not Grow Old. The only thing more important than the Beatles is the First World War. That's what I was going to say. So also recommend that. Mm-hmm. Christian, you better watch that.
I will.
You buddy.
You know I will.
Pal.
They shall not grow old walks so the Get Back could run.
And so Polar Express could chugga choo-choo. Because I'm about to talk about the Polar Express, directed by Robert Zemeckis from
Z-Man.
2004.
It's got the Tom Hanks segue we've ever had.
It's not a segue, it's a train.
I need to use chugga-choo as a verb now.
This holiday season, ellipsis, believe. Believe in the train. Believe in Tom Hanks's voice acting ability. Okay?
Yep.
Believe in the animation. Believe in the memes.
I believe
Travis Scott.
Travis Scott.
Yeah. Sicko mode or Mobama Zach.
What?
Me telling people about World War II history is like that kid on the train. Okay.
Oh.
Anyway,
this conversation has gone off the rails.
No, it has. No, I was gonna use that.
It's chugga-chooed off the rails.
Listen to. You know what?
Oh my goodness! Mitchell has left the building.
Mitchell?
Much like Steven Tyler Elf before him, he has left the building.
Do you hear that?
Oh my goodness.
You believe.
I still do believe in Santa Claus.
You believe in Santa Claus. Okay? The Polar Express is actually very well done in terms of the animation. I think Tom Hanks is a great voice actor. I think the general messages are fine. The only thing is it pretty much is just a kid's movie because it really feels super off the rails and aimless, and I have no idea, like, what the next scene's going to be, and it kind of just feels like they're going from one scene to another. It literally feels like a kid's book in the worst way. On the other hand, I do feel like the general messaging is fine. I feel like, that whole scene when Santa gets revealed and everything, I think that is, like, second to none the best part. That's the best part of the movie. The other kids are fine. I mean, it kind of almost feels like it's just like a CGI, not a CGI, like an animation test. Like they really thought they could try different types of things. So I was like, when's the water thing going to happen? I was asking the person I was watching this with, like, when's the water thing? Like, you know, are they going to show, like, water? I was like, oh, right, the hot chocolate. That's going to be, like, this is the water physics kind of show off. And this is, like, the facial animation thing. And it's just like, all right, you know, I can see why it's charming. I can see why people really like it. But, I mean, it's nothing really that special. And, you know, I think it's deserving of a watch, especially with kids. And I don't think it's, like, that creepy, but at the same time, I mean, it's kind of at that weird stage when animation was like trying to be too realistic with not as much technology in order to like get that really going. So, you know, it's fine. I don't think it deserves all the criticism that it gets, but it's definitely it's a flash in the pan in the weirdest way. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely agreed. It's a film that gets watched every year in the Garrigus household because my sister loves it, so we watch it every year on Christmas Eve. And there's some really impressive moments. The sequence where the ticket kind of gets sucked out of the train, you have this whole one shot where it kind of follows it around, where it gets like run over by wolves and picked up by a bird and taken to a nest and gets stuck on the face of a hobo under the train. Like, that's really cool. But I do think it's kind of lacking in holiday whimsy or magic. It's kind of a very grounded, gray-looking movie. I'd love to see The Polar Express remade in live action by like Wes Anderson or something. Somebody who has like that real like storybook sensibility.
Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick's The Polar Express.
I'm ready.
I'm trying to find Santa Claus.
Don't you want to believe, Wendy?
Shakes the bell 253 times.
All right, give me the bell,
to get
Wendy.
the right shot.
Give me the bell. Darling, light of my life. Okay, I'll cut the Jack Nicholson impersonation. That's all right. Well, the Week in Review has ended, and now we move on to our old favorite segment of...
The runny down.
Oh, look at that handy old role reversal. We didn't even plan that. Okie day.
I didn't plan that. You suck.
Yusa, follow me now. Okie day. We're gonna quiz Zach. We're gonna.
We're not starting this. We're not starting.
Yeah. I'm like 90% sure that I thought of something that I also thought of for Patrick Stewart's Christmas Carol and wrote it here anyway, and I didn't bother to check because I did not feel like it. So
Zach Garrigus is Scrooge.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, what? No. What? No. What? No. Did I do that?
Low-hanging fruit, Christian.
Wait, I don't think I did. I don't know. Hey,
Maybe,
we're about to find out.
maybe.
There we go.
Okay. 60 seconds. Mitchell, are you ready to start us off?
I guess. I might as well.
I sure hope that means yes. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Wanting to be Fred, feeling like Scrooge, being like Bob.
4 out of 5?
A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket.
3 out of 5.
Bread.
3 out of 5.
Retiring to Bedlam.
2 out of 5.
Amalgamated Mercantile Society.
4 out of 5.
Jacob Marley.
4 out of 5.
Small traders being content with dying off.
2 out of 5.
Ghost Effects.
3 out of 5.
Choosing film over love, wealth, and social standing.
4 out of 5.
Alastair Sim as Ebenezer Scrooge.
5 out of 5.
Ooh.
Tiny Tim, social media influencer.
3 out of 5.
Ignorance and Want.
3 out of 5.
Giga Chad goes to the present.
4 out of 5.
Prisons and Workhouses.
2 out of 5.
A perfect pudding.
3 out of 5.
The Public Domain.
2 out of 5.
Toasting to Zach after his music reviews.
4 out of 5.
Men of Business. Very wealthy. Very important.
3 out of 5.
Selling Zach's film equipment on the street.
2 out of 5.
Taking leave of one's sense because Christmas.
3 out of 5.
Joe ruining himself with his liberality.
1 second.
4 out of 5.
The realization that you will die one day. Time.
4 out of 5.
Oh,
okay.
4 out of 5? Maybe? We don't know.
Lots of pot shots at my film equipment there. I'll give you a guinea for it, and no more, no less.
I don't publish my sound tests and crap on YouTube.
I thought they were cool.
Where did this camera come from? It's all thanks to Ebenezer Scrooge. Buying off Zach.
Yeah, City Mist Productions, a Scrooge Limited Corporation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as always happens, our episode has come to an end. That was a weird segue. Well, we here at Cookie Pocket would like to wish you all a happy holidays. This episode should be going out on Christmas Eve, so, allow visions of sugar plums to dance in your head if you're into that kind of thing. And we'll see you in our third and final holiday special of the year, where, what will we be talking about, Mitchell?
I don't know. You always ask me when I don't know. The Nightmare Before Christmas, 1993, Tim Burton. Everybody's seen it. Everyone in middle school that was going through an emo phase thought it was the best movie of all time.
This is true.
It's got stop motion. It's got Danny Elfman, and that's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah.
That's all you need to know.
All true statements.
Cool. Well, if you're interested in seeing us talk about, or hearing us talk about, The Nightmare Before Christmas, produced by Tim Burton next time, then tune in. Until then, we're going to chuck-a-chew off to the North Pole, and we hope you have a holly jolly holiday. Good night.
I'm not getting on this train.